Hi, everyone. This is Ken Rakowski. I want to welcome you to our regular segment where we interview a influencer or thought leader in a specific space. I'm very honored today because we're bringing on somebody who I've known all of her life, and that's my daughter, Gia Rakowski, who's based in Chicago right now. And Gia's focus is, I'm going to let you dive into it. Gia, go ahead. What is your focus when it comes to being a thought leader?
Hello, everyone. I am Gia. I focus specifically on digital trends and how they affect youth behavior. So right now, we know that Gen Z is kind of a foreign phenomenon going on. A lot of adults don't understand them, and that's completely natural because youth behavior is fundamentally sculpted by our huge access to digital exposure, to what's going on online. So I dissect these media trends, these media patterns, and explain to an audience what it means for them.
Okay. And you use which platforms to do that?
Primarily TikTok. I'm making the shift to YouTube and Substack as well, but right now it's largely on TikTok.
Why TikTok?
I mean, it's the biggest right now. I got on there when there was kind of the TikTok gold rush, where if you make content, you will gain a following pretty quickly. But TikTok right now is the largest platform. It's beating out Instagram by a lot, and it has been. So TikTok is great. They have great algorithmic processes. They hit me with the correct audience. So it's working well for me right now. But obviously, content is never the end product. So YouTube is going to be a shift too. And also Substack is really sustainable.
It's really interesting because TikTok in your genre, specifically in Gen Z, is very popular, but it's not on the older audiences, is it?
Oh no, not in the slightest. I mean, and here's the thing, there is some history there. TikTok used to be Musical.ly. Musical.ly became big when Vine got shut down. Young people loved Vine. I think old people didn't necessarily understand Vine because it was 6-second videos. They're like, what can I learn from this? This doesn't make any sense. Then when Vine was shutting down, young people wanted something new. They went to Musical.ly, which was just like it, first of all, user interface was not great for older people, and it was just like these silly dancing videos. Why would older people care about that? Why would they even try to be on there? Then Musical.ly was bought out by ByteDance and it turned into TikTok. So I think a lot of people on TikTok are initially were on TikTok because they had Musical.ly. So that evolution there made it native to young people.
And what is your content really focused at?
My content is focused at big things happening online now. So whether that be a specific video that everyone has seen, or a general trend or pattern or new joke even online, and I dissect it from the behavioral standpoint. I explain this is how it connects to the real world. This is why it's happening. This is what it has to do with the culture we're all within, and this is what it means for your own behavior.
And your audience is primarily what?
Primarily female. I want to say either 70 or 75% female right now. That shifts a little bit depending on what if men resonate, especially with the video I make. But I want to say 70% female, 30% male between the ages of 13 to 30, specifically 16 to 25.
In what region of the world do you focus on?
The US, specifically major metropolitan cities. So think Chicago, Austin, New York, Los Angeles. I try to focus on major metropolitan areas because their views are worth a lot.
Oh, really? There's a value for a view?
Yes. So typically, TikTok also monetizes things based off of RPM. So they say your RPM will be $1 per thousand views, but a lot of people only do like 20, 30 cents per thousand views. But if you fine tune your audience in certain areas like major metropolitan areas, specifically women, their views can be worth $1.50 per thousand views.
Wow. RPM is revenue per view? Or our
Revenue per, it's supposed to be revenue per thousand, but they use
okay.
whatever.
Well, the M is the Roman numeral for a thousand.
Yes.
I get it. And what type of topics do you talk about that really get people to get engage?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, it's really hard because attention span is shot. Like you and I have talked about this before. I can tell when a video is doing well when people watch it for more than 1 second because if you watch young people scroll through TikTok, hold on, I'm a young person on TikTok right now. People, if you look at the analytics of most people's videos, people don't watch them for more than 2 seconds. So if someone's watching my video for more than 15 seconds, I know it's a good video. Now, typically, and this is something I've learned over time, you have to earn the lecture, right? So you have to open up with something that people tend to relate to. So whether it's a huge cultural moment going on, something big that happens, something that's affecting everyone, sometimes it doesn't even have to be about a trend, but I can say something like, you feel aimless. This is why your progress doesn't feel good. Something that resonates with a young audience and then they'll watch. But you have to earn that lecture moment by saying something that is either a personal anecdote that resonates or a big cultural moment that resonates, but you can't just launch into something very abstract.
Yeah, but I've noticed with yours, because I am a fan, I am a follower, you are doing something. You're doing your makeup, you're working on your hair, you're drinking
Yes.
in action mode. Is that part of your secret?
Yes, actually. And I learned this. One of the first videos I had that blew up was me. And in the beginning of the video, I had a lip gloss and I popped it open, and that sound kept people there. And then I started talking. This is actually like a huge thing that people do for engagement. This is why a lot of get ready with me videos do very well. And even with that, you have to do a trick. You can't describe exactly what you're doing to your face. You have to say something else while you're doing that because you have to have new information overlaid with the visual. People on TikTok are cognitively fried. I can't say that in a nicer way. You have to do a lot of different things at once to keep them there. That's also why I have the huge captions. Like yeah, I have to have a lot going on.
And you are looking at your, we call them KPIs, your key performance indicators, things that really show you that you're doing well. It's all based upon view time, right?
A lot of it has to do with view time. Also, a lot of it has to do with favoriting, right? What I notice about my videos specifically, since they are more long form educational, people are more likely to derive actionable information from them. So I know my video is doing well when it resonates with an audience when the favorite ratio is really high. A lot of the time, 1/5 of my viewers have favorited my video, when reality is, like for a lot of people, it's like 1/20th of their viewers.
Wow. And if you're favored more, you actually rise in the ranks more than two?
Yeah, it's technically, and I'm not sure I'm not sure about the legitimacy of this, but people talk about how there's a TikTok point system where a view is worth one thing. How people like, well, when you post a video, TikTok allegedly pushes it out to for like a first grouping of viewers, and then whether or not they like it, or they favorite it, or they comment it, or they share it, or whatever it may be, those are each worth a different amount of points, and then it pushes it out to more viewers based off of your point total. I don't know if that's true. That's what people are saying right now, but Lord knows.
And do you feel the Gen Z audience that you talk to in the States is different than a Gen Z that's sitting outside the United States?
Wow, wildly by a lot.
Like how? Let's talk about this then. So if you
Okay.
look at a Gen Z person in the United States, um, what would they be? Do they look at themselves differently than a Gen Zer that's sitting on the other side of the world?
Yes, and here's what I'll tell you. What's very different about the United States is our economic structure, right? Specifically, the way we view our economic structure. So, America isn't the only capitalist country in the world, but the way our population views capitalism is very different than in other areas. Young people view capitalism as a very pervasive force in their life, things that make them need to act in exclusively monetary terms, looking for just one thing. They view capitalism as a force trying to make them a machine. And even if it doesn't exist like that in its essence, the perception of it being that has a huge influence on our behavior. So, first of all, think of that economic structure. Then also think of young people in the US spending 8+ hours every single day on their phone. All of these things right now, so the things that shape us are called socialization factors, right? So think culture, religion, family, friends, things that typically tend to exist regionally in person. Almost all of these factors, so think culture, religion, education, friends, everything except for family, which remains secular, can be found online. So youth behavior, specifically in America, is sculpted by all these factors being fed to them in junk food form through their phones alongside the institutions we live within. So right now, if we look at that, right, we look at us being fed not necessarily satiating content that makes us feel like our community is fulfilled, but it isn't really. What does that make us do? It makes us not interact with people as much in real life because we think we have it on our phones. It makes us afraid to talk to people in elevators. We don't want to talk to the cashier. Why would I busy myself? Why would I waste time doing it? That's the capitalistic mindset coming in. Why would I waste time doing this? Why should I cook my own food when I can DoorDash it? Why should I read this when I can just have it synthesized? As if you would spend the time doing anything else. People always talk about saving time, especially when they're young, especially when they're unemployed. But in reality is, what would you spend that time doing otherwise? It's scrolling on your phone. That is like the most socially acceptable addiction that's happening right now. So all these behavioral factors, specifically the individualism, stems from this whole thing. Not wanting to waste your time connecting with other people because I can find it all on here. Oh
Wow.
no, capitalism says that I have to output as much money as possible. So why would I waste time with friendships when I have to focus on my career?
Individualism is what you said
Huge. Individualism is huge with young people.
in the States specifically.
Yeah, it's so bad that people have started to call it the hyper individualist epidemic. It's a really bad thing.
And what would be the Gen Zer outside the United States, Europe,
I would say
Africa, Asia?
it's much more collectivistic. I think also, definitely the specific religions of the area affect that. I also think in specific areas, especially if you look at the culture in Europe, right? When I look at my Greek background, I think of how people are in Greece, right? There's much more of a focus on small regional similarities. So family, right? That gives people kind of a built-in sense of community without other factors telling them that they need to separate themselves from it. So there's much more of a unanimous collectivistic culture in other areas that you won't find as much in the US. Maybe you'll find it in certain rural areas, but those areas wouldn't necessarily be considered modern.
Okay. And let's talk about priorities. When we start to look
Oh,
in the United States, specific priorities and pressures, tell me about what Gen Z is thinking about a priority or a pressure.
I mean, it's all about money. A lot of it is about money. I mean, and here's the truth. The truth is, college used to work for a lot of previous generations. So we're still kind of fed that message that if you want to do well in your career, if you want to do well in life, you need to go to college. That doesn't work as well anymore. Unless you want to go into medicine, unless you want to go into law, college isn't necessarily the way to go. Now, the weird thing is a lot of jobs also say you need a degree, but in reality, the degree doesn't actually help you do well at the job. That's just kind of the baseline that a lot of jobs set because of previous generations. So right now, young people are graduating with a lot of debt. The trying to find employment is also very difficult. Maybe it's difficult because young people are facing employment in the same way other generations taught them to, where you have to apply to it in a certain way, you have to pitch yourself in a certain way, and that might not work anymore. But the fact is, young people are having a harder time finding employment opportunities, internship opportunities, and they're graduating with a lot of debt. Now, this debt wouldn't be a problem if we were taught that money isn't everything, but the way we were raised is money is everything. So that debt has much more pressure. It puts a lot more pressure on us.
And then tell us about the counterpart in the global Gen Z
I
audience.
mean, I mean, very, very different. Yeah, again, even in Europe, people, a lot of young people joke that when they have a friend that is chronically unemployed, is what they call them. They say that they have a European mindset. And that's not offensive to Europeans at all. It's just a very different way of going through this world, right? Remember that story you talked about that store in Greece that said they were open 24 hours and you thought it was 24 hours every day? And they said, oh no, 24 hours, not all at once.
True.
That highlights the biggest difference. I mean, the truth is, young people in America being sculpted by all of this capitalistic noise online, or at least that translation of it, are taught that they have to work all the time, no matter what. That is the function of their life. That is what will give them purpose. Where in other areas, you are allowed the opportunity to find purpose in other things. You're allowed to find it in family. You're allowed to find it in friends, in food. Where in America, the kind of mindset is, you get out at 18, don't let the door hit you on the way out, and you go and work. So people are only allowed to find fulfillment and purpose in that career, in the career that they actually can't even get started because they're in so much debt.
So we're talking to Gia Rakowski, who, like I said, besides my daughter, is this insanely successful thought leader on TikTok. If people want to find you on TikTok, what's your TikTok handle?
Okay, it's at attempted soch, at ATTEMPTED, soch, SOC. You can also find me on LinkedIn. That's just my name, Gia Rutkowski. Send me a DM, watch my content. I try to synthesize every single thing I talk about in very accessible language.
And you do a great job. I'm a fan, okay? I'm not just your dad, okay? Talk to me about optimism and perception of opportunity when it comes to Gen Z in North America, United States.
Yeah, okay, here's what I'll say. I remember being in middle school, right? I think I was 12 years old at the time. And my friends and I, during our lunch period, we would go through our phones and we would scroll through Instagram together because that's how young people bond, right? And we saw this quote that completely blew up on a platform called Tumblr, and every young person ever loved it. And it was, I love being a pessimist because either I'm right or I'm pleasantly surprised. This can generally be used to describe the behavior of most young people. A lot of young people will be pessimists. They'll praise their life as generally negative, and they'll call themselves realists because we are fed a lot of this pessimistic noise online because that's what gets views. That's what gets us there. Also, keep in mind, when we're sculpted by media, and we're sculpted by this digital media, media is generally negative. It is really hard to find positive, uplifting content on there. So that does determine a lot of how we view this world. But the conditions don't necessarily allow us to be optimistic, and it's considered to be a radical act to be grateful. I remember there was something that blew up on Twitter, and now Twitter isn't a reliable source because people on there can get a little crazy. But I remember someone talking about how beautiful their life was. They got to sit out on their porch and eat breakfast and listen to the birds. And all of the comment replies were, how dare you say this? I cannot experience this. You suck. Why do you make me feel inept like this? Almost every single time you see someone, even online, be grateful about their life, there are a lot of young people in the comments saying, well, I'm broke, so I couldn't understand this. Well, my life sucks, so I couldn't understand this. I'm being serious. It sounds absurd, but time and time again, I think a lot of young people find this weird sense of solace in their own self-pity. It's actually pretty morbid.
It actually sounds horrible. It really does. There's a book called Tribal Leadership that actually talks about these different levels of where people are. And generally, the bottom strata of these people that are not in a good place are the ones that blame everyone else for their problems. And it's almost like a victim mentality. Do you find that attitude being prevalent within Gen Z?
Yes, I was just listening to a podcast about this. He's a really great psychiatrist. Dr. K's podcast is Healthy Gamer GG. You should get him on Metal, actually. He's really good. Um, but he made it, I can't quote it exactly, but he talked about how previously an honor culture didn't exist just in the South, but it was kind of throughout the entire United States, where people said, if something bad happens to me, I have to take accountability and I have to fix it. I have to fix it in that moment. So either if someone speaks badly to me, I have to get them back. I have to make myself feel like it's even. But now, and here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with mental health advocacy, help advocacy. But now, in the past like 2 decades, when we've learned that if someone bullies me at school, I can just tell the teacher and they will fix it for me. A third party will fix it for me. People have learned that it's more socially rewarding to be a victim than to fix it all on their own. So this is also a really huge way of thinking for young people, just because that's what we've been taught is correct. I mean, I remember growing up, people telling me if something bad happens, don't talk to the other person, bring the teacher into it, bring an authority into it. So now these people, all these young people are relying on these institutions around us to fix things for us, but evidently that hasn't been working.
Oh man, it really seems like my generation messed it up for you. Tell me about the optimism perception when it comes to the global Gen Z, or do you have any idea of what they're thinking about, what they're excited about, or what they're not excited about?
I mean, I can't tell you with full certainty. Uh, I'm actually unsure. That's harder to say globally because I mean, I can't sit there and generalize the entire globe that has like
Yeah,
very
you're right.
different culture.
I could accept that. I mean, obviously, they're more concerned about things like war because it's closer to them, where someone in the States, they might be an activist when it comes to war, something happening in
Oh,
Palestine or Ukraine. But a lot of these people are right next to the war-torn country or they're a fear of invasion, which is something
yeah.
you think about. You
Well,
really have.
activism in the US is very different. I mean, like, here's the thing. Like, I actually just read a consumer report about this yesterday because, and I want everyone to know this right now, anyone in marketing, anyone trying to sell to young people. Every single online source will tell you that young people choose what they buy based off of how moral it is, how ethical it is, if it's good for the environment, if it's good, if it's ethical. Only 1% of the people who say that actually buy for that reason. Literally, there was a report I read yesterday that said that I was blown away. But this is very true. I mean, think about these blocks, because here's the thing about people. We don't necessarily mature as we age linearly. More so, it's about the blocks of experience we're in. So think about middle school, that's a block of experience. High school, block of experience. College, block of experience. The 2 years after college, we're trying to build a career, block of experience. That is how we measure our life because in each of those blocks of experience, we're exposed to more people, we're exposed to new things, we're exposed to a new environment. So think young people as they're developing. 2016, block of experience, that election, a lot of political things going on that year. 2020, same thing. 2024, same thing. In each of these blocks of experience, almost every single voting year, you experience all this huge moral, political outrage. So young people are raised with the thinking, if I'm to be a good young person, if I am to be a good person, I have to be vocal about these things. But in reality is, they're not informed enough to legitimately feel it. So a lot of it is what people call performative activism. I'm going to repost something on my Instagram story to show other people that I'm a good person, but do I actually make my own decisions based off of what I'm portraying? No.
This is so powerful. I would highly suggest you follow Gia on the social media platforms, LinkedIn and TikTok, but also I am a paying member to her Substack. So support her by go checking her out. What's your Substack, Gia?
My Substack is just Gia Substack. It is, if you want to find it more directly, because Substack can sometimes be difficult to navigate on the website itself, go to my TikTok. In my bio, there is a link that leads directly to my Substack. The next following months, I'm going to be incredibly active on there. I'm also going to be releasing some podcast episodes hosted on there. So if you want new content from me, if you're very curious, I definitely recommend going there.
Awesome. Gia Rakowski, thanks a lot for hanging out with us.
Thank you for having me.